Oklahoma City Thunder fall to the Philadelphia 76ers, but it was more encouraging than you might think.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and Inside the Thunder beat writer, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. On today's show, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder falling to the Philadelphia 76ers and why that's more encouraging than you might think, despite the standings shuffle. Speaking of shuffling, Joel Embiid, the Joel Embiid hokey pokey that the Philadelphia 76ers pulled off today was just unbelievable. You put Joel in, you put Joel out, you put Joel as questionable, then you shake them all about, you do the Joel hokey pokey and you turn yourself around, then Philadelphia plays them anyway. It was just impressive to see the hoops that they jumped through to eventually have Joel Embiid out there against Oklahoma City. Meanwhile, the Thunder did not have SGA. They did not have Jaylin Williams, and the Sixers were also without Tyrese Maxey. So at one point in this day, it appeared that the Thunder would not have SGA or J-Dub, and the Sixers would not have Joel Embiid or Tyrese Maxey. Then it gets flipped up to where Embiid ends up playing. And the Thunder still once led by 13 points. Philadelphia never led by more than 4. The Thunder kept an 8-point advantage for a solid portion of this game, really doing a good job of staving off some of those Philadelphia runs. The Thunder, managed their scoring lulls until the very end. And I think that that's impressive. I think that whenever you look at basketball, of course, it's a game of runs, especially whenever Joel Embiid is going to get 8, free throws in the fourth quarter. But for all intents and purposes, without their 2 best scorers, without their 2 guys who can go get you a bucket, the Thunder did a good job of hanging in this game. And through 13 lead changes and 6 ties, of course, you're going to feel like, once up by 13, you could have won this game in Philadelphia on national TV and really sort of stolen one in that capacity. But a 13-point lead in the modern NBA is relatively nothing, especially when you don't have a closer. And that's what it came down to. The Thunder ran out of gas. They didn't have either one of their closers who have proven time and time again to hit tough shot after tough shot, including on Sunday. And it was just an odd game in that capacity. The Thunder actually won the rebounding battle. They won the turnover battle technically. They had 2 less turnovers in Philadelphia, but that 14 number is much higher than what it typically is for the Thunder. The Thunder won points in the paint by 4. They lost second chance points by 1. Only 1 fast break points by 1 as well. So all of these, categories, very uncharacteristic for Oklahoma City. What ends up doing them in is their shooting splits. 42% from the floor, 33% from 3. Compare that to Philadelphia, who shot 48% from the floor and 46% from 3. Kelly Oubre was awesome in this game. Joel Embiid, walked to the free throw line in the fourth quarter. And the Thunder were held to 25 fourth quarter points. And they missed 3 amazing looks from beyond the arc that would have sent this game to overtime. Would have helped you propel in this game. Overall, I think that the Thunder had really good ball movement, really good player movement. They missed some open shots. They settled for some threes. But they did not have that go-to guy. But it's important to not act like this suddenly changes anything. Because if you're someone who is down after that loss, you had 2 cracks with Isaiah Joe and 1 from J. Will from 3. If any of those shots go in and you eventually win the game, then the same people who are down right now would be touting this Thunder team as contenders. Nothing changed. The Thunder are still an incredibly good basketball team. The Thunder have still proven to be one of the best teams in the NBA, and this game goes a long way in them again showing that they're one of the best teams in the NBA. This is what they can do without SGA. This is what they can do without Jaylin Williams. The bottom line is Philadelphia had their best player. You were without your two top players. And some bad calls that favored Embiid late with no star on the Thunder to counter. And I don't want to sit here and blame the refs in this sense of just the raw free throw numbers for Embiid. But I will say that those free throws get kind of leveled if in turn Shai's going to the line 10 times. But with no star to counter that, even Chet Holmgren, who was more aggressive in this game, he is not at that stage of his career where he's getting those calls. We'll talk about that coming up. But you didn't really have a counter to that. You didn't really have consistent offense from anyone, but specifically, besides the starting five, who laid a really good first punch and did all they could to stave off the Sixers. But eventually, Philadelphia came roaring back. So I think that's the massive takeaway is that this Thunder team, actually, there's a lot of encouraging parts to this loss. You go on the road to take on Boston, though, on the second night of a back-to-back. You got to wonder, what does that look like for Oklahoma City? Are they going to have SGA? Are they going to have J-Dub? Are they going to have one or the other, or none, or both? But you got to be, dare I say, proud of how the Thunder fought in this game, how the Thunder competed in this game. You would clearly like to win all 82. But acknowledging that it's impossible to win all 82, this is the best loss that you can really suffer. Given the context, this is the best loss for you. Coming up, let's talk Chet Holmgren, who I think did a much better job of being aggressive. Let's talk Lou Dort. Let's talk all about it on today's show. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at eBay Motors. Check them out today because passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning a championship. It's also the formula to keep your ride or die alive at eBay Motors. They have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with 122 million parts to choose from for your number one ride or die. You're always going to find exactly what you're looking for with eBay's Guaranteed Fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're going to be burning rubber, not cash, whenever you go there with all the parts that you need at the prices that you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home a huge win. Get inside of ebaymotors.com and find the parts to keep your ride or die alive. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Well, let's talk Chet Holmgren, or as Reggie Miller kept calling him, Chet Holmgren. I don't even know how he began to mispronounce his name. But with Chet, 22 points in this one, 7 boards, an assist, 2 blocks, 3 for 6 from 3 overall, 7 for 12. I'm sorry, 3 for 6 for 3, 7 for 14 overall. I thought that from the word go, Chet established a more aggressive mindset than you're typically used to seeing from him. This is something that happens with rookies. You see rookies need some time to adjust and to adapt to their role and understand how to pick their spots. For the vast majority of last season, we were clamoring for Jaylin Williams to be more aggressive and be more aggressive, be more aggressive. And now J-Dub is showing that superstar potential. It's been similar for Chet Holmgren. There's been moments where you want him to show more aggression, show more aggression, show more aggression. And to his credit in this game, when he had to be the guy, he was able to step up. Now, the variation of stepping up for a center looks a little bit different than, of course, for a wing or a guard. But I thought that ultimately he was really aggressive tonight, which is something that you like to see. I thought that tonight you can go back and watch even his misses, even the misses, and you can see some elite footwork. Like he had this one post fadeaway where he had no business getting a shot off, and that is only due to his elite footwork. The spin cycle through the lane, the late and one immediately following him being dunked on, I think is a sequence that shows you his competitive spirit. You know, Chet will hardly ever be trailing plays because he's complaining to refs. He'll hardly ever be looking around, and late to the action. And he's going to challenge you at the rim. He's going to get dunked on, but he's going to challenge you at the rim, and he's also going to get blocks and spark transition and help the Thunder the other way. So, an area about Chet Holmgren's game that I don't think has been discussed enough. I think that we're so wrapped up in how good Chet Holmgren already is, how good that Jaylin Williams already is. And we forget that the basic formula in the NBA, the tried and true method for improving your points per game, is at the free throw line. It's what takes you from a 5-point per game score to a 10-point per game score, and so on and so forth, eventually climbing your way to a 30-point per game score. Not saying that J-Dub or Chet will ever get to the ranks of a 30-point per game score, but on top of their just raw potential as being young players in this league and learning to play in the NBA, they have an added layer of, here's two guys who typically gets to the rim hard, specifically J-Dub, but Chet also gets downhill hard. Here's two guys who do that consistently, and yet they have not been rewarded for it yet. They have not been sent to the free throw line at a massive clip. And so when those free throws come, I think is when you're going to see another leap in scoring for both those guys. But it was really evident, today, and of course, there were multiple plays where it felt like Chet could have gone to the line, where the whistle was not called on the other end. There's phantom fouls called on Joel Embiid, who's earned that reputation, who's earned that whistle. And he's picked up some tips and tricks on how to get that whistle, which, ironically enough, Chet Holmgren and Jaylin Williams talked to me about after the last home game. So those things, I think, will stack up for Chet Holmgren. And it's just interesting to see how much better it can look just by sheer getting the benefit of the whistle. But he was good tonight. And I think that this was a game where he rose to the occasion. And, after a stretch of looking a bit fatigued and looking a bit off, Chet was really good. J. Will stepped up in this game. And I think that J. Will was even better than his box score shows. His box score shows 6 points, a career high 12 assists, 6 rebounds, and a steal. But 0 for 5 from 3. He was a +1. I think that J. Will could have taken even more shots from beyond the arc. But I think that the misses, of course, play into that. But he could have even tried to punish Embiid more for playing a drop on him some in this game. But even without the 3-point shot falling, Jaylin Williams was able to really lean on Embiid and really work Embiid in the post. They played really good defense, walling up on Embiid, drew a charge in this one. And his ability to play make for others, not just in raw passing, but there's plays where he's screening 3 or 4 times, and it's gaining separation. He's running a couple DHOs, and it's gaining separation and benefiting the offense. And then him and Isaiah Joe had this natural 2-man game. Of course, they've been playing together forever. And it's benefiting both sides. Like, he hit a couple of floaters in the lane that were really nice. And I think that with J. Will, you can get launch padded into a different conversation about how to defend Joel Embiid. So as everyone freaks out, and will continue to do so, about the Thunder needing a big man or needing someone who has size and needing this rebounding, just behemoth traditional center, I think that Jay Will shows you why this style of play can really work. Because the bottom line is the center who you're dreaming of that can rebound, that's athletic, that can also defend Embiid and defend Jokic one-on-one does not exist. The closest you get to it is Bam Adebayo in Miami. That's the closest you get to it. And those guys are not just falling out of thin air. Those guys are not a dime a dozen, so it's tough to go replicate a Bam Adebayo type. But what you can do is you can stay true to how you've built this roster and admit that no matter who you go get, name your big man who you want the Thunder to draft, who you want the Thunder to trade for, who you want the Thunder to acquire. Name your big man. They cannot defend Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic one-on-one. Neither can Jay Will, neither can Chet, neither can anyone in this league, which is why those two guys have been passing the MVP trophy around for a quarter of a half decade. That's a really country-fried way to say 3 years. In fact, it's so country-fried, I'm not sure it makes sense. I'm not sure that even the most cow-pastured farmers in big pasture have ever said that. So I do apologize. But with Jay Will, you saw him really take on some shots from Embiid and wall himself up and then let his teammates swarm. It was Case and Wallace diving in, getting a steal with his hand in the cookie jar on Embiid in the post. It was Wiggins, like one of the first plays of the game, rotating down, taking a charge on Embiid. It's going to take multiple bodies anyway, and if you keep your similar style of basketball, you can really benefit from getting out and running in transition, from turning games over, just like the Thunder did early in this game. But no big man is beating Embiid one-on-one, and I think that if you go back and watch how the Thunder got creative in scheming for Embiid with specifically Chet and Jay Will on the floor together, I think that that's better. Frankly, that's a better schematic approach than just signing some heavy-legged big man and hoping for the best. Because the best's not going to come. The best is going to be Joel Embiid getting whatever he wants on the court at the sacrifice of your identity. Isaiah Joe, I know that he missed the two shots at the end, one being an air ball, and that's going to leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth, in his mouth, and everyone else's mouth. But 14 points off the bench, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. He blocked the jump shooter. Yeah, he went 4 for 11 from 3. But I think that in this game, you saw how he can step up as a playmaker. And really, it's twofold as a playmaker. Number one, with the ball in his hands, yes, that has improved. Because as he's starting to get downhill more, and guys are starting to respect him in the mid-range, respect him in the lane more, it's shifting the defense enough to be able to go find the open man. And similarly, even whenever the ball is not in his hands, if he's just simply diving at the rim or cutting back door, it's going to alert the defense, and you can free up vantage points elsewhere for this Thunder team. So his gravity is now extending just not only the three-point line, not only him as a shooter, but it's now reaching these other points of him as a driver, of him as a cutter. And it's loosening up the defense for other players around him, and it did that in this game as well. So I think that Isaiah Joe, despite the tough ending for him, deserves a lot of praise for what he was able to accomplish. Coming up, the Thunder played Aaron Wiggins over 30 minutes, and it was a great sight to behold and more. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at Amazon Fire TV. The Amazon Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV Stick. You can plug it into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend of baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created a Fire TV channel that delivers a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes us at Locked On. most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more, and keep up to date with the latest action in the sports world, from March Madness to the NBA, MLB, and a lot more. Not to mention the great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. So check out the Fire TV channels on the Fire TV with the Alexa devices as well. If you have not checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me by visiting them at amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. That's amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. How about Aaron Wiggins? 32 minutes. Got off to a great start. 15 points, 4 boards, an assist, 3 steals, and a block. And when you look at his game, he converts this and one at the rim. He caps off a Dort steal with a transition dunk, and he's flexing and screaming at the bench, taking on some of that emotional leadership that J-Dub left behind whenever he was out in this game. He was flying around the court, rotating well defensively, a really good off-ball cutter. He just made a winning impact, was a +3 in this game. And I think that Aaron Wiggins, every single game, brings the juice, and you had to play him a ton of minutes in this game. You had really no other choice. We'll talk about Lindy Waters coming up. You had no other choice but to do that. But this is a trend that should continue. This is a trend that you should continue for the Thunder. Not 32 minutes per se. Of course, 32 minutes is a bit extreme, we can all admit. But it also can't be 12 minutes. And I really think it should be closer to the 20 than the 15 mark for Aaron Wiggins. And I'll continue to die on that hill. I think that the Thunder will benefit from more Wiggins minutes. Josh Giddey did not have the flashiest box score of the week because he's had some great ones this week. Like his flashiest, you could argue was Milwaukee, certainly New Orleans, and so on and so forth. He's had a just otherworldly week. But I think this was still a really good game from him. 50% shooting on 10 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, 1 block, 2 turnovers. Why is that a good game? He's had so many great ones. He had the triple-double in the Garden less than 48 hours ago. Why was this such a good one? The knock on Josh Giddey, he's been playing, he played bad at the start of the year, obviously. In the midst of that playing bad, he had a couple games sprinkled in that you can remember him playing well. And in those games that were playing well, people kept saying, well, and I'm people, well, he plays good whenever there's not a true elite rim protector. But when there is, he doesn't have that same oomph. In the month of March, he's had that same oomph. This was not a game tailor-made for him to have 30 points or 25 points or whatever. But I think that he picked his spots very well. I think that he continued to show you that he's a really, truly improved rim finisher. And the March month shooting total at the rim, which was 69%, like that bears it out to you. But in this game, you just saw so much from him that is so repeatable and so sustainable that I don't think that this is a hot streak. I think that this is what Josh Giddey can be in this role. He starts out with this killer jab step, drive downhill, seals off Harris for the finish. Then he has this transition initiating contact finish later in the game, which is something that's new from him, but has been consistent this month. You go back and watch Josh Giddey's, all of his rim finishes from this month, and you're going to see a lot more initiating contact than you have previously. And then he had this turnaround elbow jumper off the dribble, which was FIBA-esque. We've only really seen him pull that off in FIBA, specifically that final game of FIBA where he looked like Dirk out there whenever the Boomers were out there balling. And off of this improved finishing, off of this improved driving ability, you can now use your playmaking to your advantage. Because you're kind of gapping and loading up in the lane just in case he does drive, but you still want to fly out to three-point shooters, he's able to use that pass fake to shimmy shake his defender off of him and get to a spot to hit that floater. So you're seeing it all just sprout up like a tree with many branches off of it of how Josh Giddey becomes successful. And while Josh Giddey's not going to steal headlines defensively, I thought that through this month of March and in this game again, he's been a really, really engaged and improved team defender. Two things that is going to stand tall for him the rest of the way. Cason Wallace, 6 points, 3 boards, and assists to steal. Would have liked to see more than 13 minutes from him. It wasn't his greatest night in the world, but also he did have some interesting things like the crossover pull-up, the baseline mid-range off the dribble that you'd want to see more of and explore more of. And, you did play Lindy Waters 7 minutes in this game. I'm never going to agree with the Lindy Waters appraisal, frankly. Lou Dort, 15 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 50% from the floor, 3 for 6 from 3. He did have 3 turnovers. I think that in a vacuum, obviously, you would want Lou Dort to not have 3 turnovers and to limit some of those bad drives that he had, which led to turnovers and missed shots. But when you contextualize it with you're missing J-Dub, you're missing Shai, and somebody has to step up and be aggressive, you fall into the similar trap that you fell into 2 years ago, that you fell into it sometimes last season, where if there's anything about Lou Dort, he's going to at least be aggressive. And so if there's no one there to, not rein him in, but there's no one there like Shai and J-Dub who's going to defer to and who want that opportunity, then he'll take it upon himself. And he had a hot stretch in the third quarter. He had a massive scrappy putback to put OKC up 1 late before the Embiid free throws. But he also had some bad possessions. And I don't think that this game should make you fear that anything is going to change. Again, nothing is changing because of this game. Lou Dort is still a more wildly efficient player than he's ever been. He'll be very efficient every time he shares the floor with J-Dub and Shai and Chet. And he had some bad turnovers in this one. But somebody had to have the bad turnovers. Somebody had to have the ball in their hands. Giddey had a bad turnover late as well, and it's just part of it. We can't sit here and act surprised when the Thunder can't close out games without their 2 best closers. That doesn't mean that Lou Dort played bad or that Josh Giddey played bad because they made mistakes down the stretch. Ideally, they're not in that position. So for the context of what they were forced into, I thought both guys played well. For the context of that. Can he hustle? Limited minutes in the broader sense, but very impactful in those minutes. And very timely. The back-to-back threes was huge. The putback bucket was huge. 2 for 2 from 3 overall, a steal, a rebound, and 8 points from him. MVP this game, I'm going to go with Chet Holmgren. I think that he deserves it. I think that he was a much more efficient player in this game. And efficient isn't the right word. Aggressive is the right word for Chet Holmgren for this game against Philadelphia. Now, the Thunder will move on to take on the Boston Celtics on the second night of back-to-back in Boston. Always tough to play in the Garden. I'm interested to see how the injury report shakes out. We'll read some of your takeaways right now. Wesley says the 1 seed seems like a lost opportunity when the Thunder should have really went for it with less than 10 games left in the season. I don't think that the seeding stuff matters as much as the health stuff does. And this stuff is all just extremely volatile right now, especially with the lack of separation. You beat the Rockets in overtime, and then you look at the standings right now, and it's completely different. So, all these games stack up on each other of games that you wish you would have had in October, games you wish you would have had right now, and future games that we'll see what happens down the stretch of the season. But I think ultimately you'd much rather have J-Dub and Shai healthy than them exerting themselves and then limiting their capacity. It's similar, I think, to your iPhone battery. If you go to your settings right now and look up your iPhone battery, if you've had your phone for longer than a day, your maximum capacity is now less than 100%. And that's the case for every NBA player out there right now, their maximum capacity is less than 100% because you've just gone through this gauntlet of a season. But the question is, how drained is that battery? Like my maximum capacity on my phone is 85%. So even though that, I charge my phone to 100% each night, the most I'm going to get out of this battery is 85%. And again, that's the case for these NBA players as well. Shai's never going to get back to 100% until next October. J-Dub, same way. Chet, same way. Like none of these guys in the NBA are going to be 100% until next October. The question is, what's their percentage at? So would you rather Shai go from being a 90% battery capacity to an 82% battery capacity for the sake of the 1 seed? Because if he's at 82% battery capacity, it doesn't matter anymore. So to beat any team that you could possibly play, whether you're the 1 seed or the 10th seed, you need Shai and you need J-Dub to be as close to 100% battery capacity as you possibly can get. And if that means that you lose a game in Philadelphia that you could have won, without them, you could have won. A couple of those shots go in and you beat Philadelphia, then so be it, if that's the case. Because again, this is all for naught if those two guys are not 100%. So I don't really have a feeling one way or the other about the 1 seed. Would it have been cool to be the 1 seed? Will it be cool if the Thunder still find a way to get to the 1 seed? Of course. But not at the sacrifice of those two guys. I think that ultimately you really should be at minimum unmoved by this game, one way or the other. At maximum, you should be extremely encouraged of the fight and the just grit that they showed to even have a chance at the end to beat this Philadelphia team. Without J-Dub, without Chet. Without J-Dub, without Shai. If I told you in October that the Thunder were going to be such a team that has found such depth that without J-Dub and without Shai against an Eastern Conference playoff team, and Joel Embiid, you had a shot to win at the very end, you'd have thought I was crazy. But it's what happened tonight. And we'll see what happens against Boston. We'll see how they handle the end of this road trip, and then they have a long homestand and a week off before the playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, shout out to the OKC Blue. Big win against the Rio Grande Valley Vipers to move on to the next round, semifinals in the Western Conference for the Blue at the end of this week. I got to talk to Cam Woods and Newsome Jang after the game. We'll talk more about that on tomorrow's show. And of course, I'm going to write about it on InsideTheThunder.com. So look out for that. SI.com/NBA/Thunder is how you get to the site, or just Google InsideTheThunder.com. But subscribe to this podcast, the Locked On Thunder Podcast, anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a review. And until tomorrow, we're going to recap the Celtics game. Be good and be good to one another.